Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss now! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will be crushed.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Welcome to the Deep Share. I am here with my friend Jocke Häggström. How you doing, man?
Perfect. I'm doing really good. Been resting all weekend. Been playing a lot of music because I recently moved here to the city again. So nice. I'm quite into the, you need to push, and just continue if you want to, climb a little bit, because if you just do it like one time each week, it's you're only gonna maintain, right?
Yeah, dude, I totally feel you. I've been trying to do that with the podcast as well, like push more episodes out, get my ass down here to the studio and work on it. But yeah, laziness pulls me away. It's tough when you work so much already, and it's just yeah, it's my passion. Yeah, it's what I want to do. But oh my God, to drag myself through it sometimes. But yeah, it's good to keep at it, man. Yeah, you've been telling me about your project that you've been working on. It's a solo project, right? You're playing everything.
Yeah, well, I've been working with Reaper. It's like Cubase, but you can pull all this so you can take software from all kind of software and put it together in that Reaper program. So I have like this a lot of drum machines and synths and ambient stuff that you make like film music with, and I've been working a lot with that. But I have this little sound card that I can put a microphone in, and also like a guitar and bass. So I just record everything with that, and the drums in like the prototype songs are like only this machine made drums, but they sound pretty good. So
yeah, you were using Easy Drummer, right? I think you and I were talking about that at one point.
Yeah, but they have this Superior Drummer now, which is even better.
Yeah,
so I use that one, but it's still Tune Track. They do great things, software, and also EaseMix, and tons of plugs. But I've been, like I said, I've been doing it for over 10 years, so it's like I have collected. Well, I have this hard drive that I have been writing songs on, or recorded songs on for like over 10 years.
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
I think I have around like 40 or 50 songs there in
That's
different
crazy.
shapes and forms. Yeah, but you never get really satisfied, and when a year or two goes by and you hear it, you sort of I don't know, it just becomes like that. But it's nice to have that archive to go back and play. You can just jump in on the rhythms or the lead or whatever you want. It's nice.
That's cool,
good way
man.
to practice also. Yeah. So
yeah,
so you're back.
Yeah, man. In a brand new place with almost no furniture so far, getting all furnished.
The thing is, I live so far up in the house, and to take the bed up here was a pain in the ass, man, because the elevator is too small. So I had to I gotta throw it down the balcony here when I move out.
Moving's a bitch.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I wanted to have you on, of course, to talk about some of Bock Saga, but more than that, because I mean, you've already taught me a bunch of different things about, the Nordic culture and just this ancient history that exists in that part of the world. That my mind's just been blown open because I never focused on Scandinavia. I never really looked into the history of it, and Vikings was always really interesting and I liked that. But, it seems like culture always tries to push us more towards like looking into the ancient Egyptian areas and Mesoamerica and stuff like that, coming out of the rainforest, and all of that's fascinating. And it always kind of, from an American perspective, it's like, oh, Scandinavia, like European culture, that's already figured out. We already know everything about that. It's just white people. There's nothing to learn, and like that's so not true at all. It's a fascinating culture. And my God, what we're finding out about Bock Saga is just absolutely mind-blowing.
The Americans is a funny one, I think. I always when I was a child, I really thought that Americans was cool. The image that was portrayed in the movies coming out of there, and so this Clint Eastwood character is quite someone. I mean, it's just when you're a kid and younger, you think about 200 or 300 years in history is such a long time, but the older you get, and if you are interested in history like me, 300 years is like nothing. It sort of becomes very recent in that perspective. And American history is very recent, if you ask me. So a lot of your culture comes from the European culture. I can see that they call Sweden like Little America in Europe because we are so similar.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
But I don't think it's just because of the television programs and all of this, but it's a different story. The Swedish history is a really amazing one because what I've been finding is that in the Bock Saga they talk about pagans and pagans coming out of the Scandinavia with at least after this second Ragnarök, but that's a huge story around. But anyway, what I can see is that they made some kind of comeback in the 1500s, at least here in Sweden. So, but they had to use this kind of Christianity and sort of develop it, or through
like,
this kind of already established Christian way, we can sort of change the Christianity from within a little bit, or use it. I don't know, but this is how I see it a little bit.
So kind of like they went in through the back door, kind of like, let's use their symbolism, or isn't Christianity already taking from much, much older symbolism already as it is?
Yes, because what's happened there in the 1500 here in Europe was that this Lutheran church, this Protestant. I know that people have been making podcasts on, we all talk about like this Illuminati or Templar or Freemason, whatever, this kind of hidden force is some kind of bad thing only. But from my understanding, there are different kind of forces within. I see it's as at the bigger scale. To simplify it, I would say there's like this Templars and the assassins, or the Hashashins, they call it. So, and that's the Hashashins, or the assassins as we know them. They are this more kind of religious Muslim, I think, or it's a more religious force. Meanwhile, the Templars are the pagan forces, so to speak. The Nordic, it's a Nordic thing.
The heathen.
Yeah, it's a heathen, pagan and they use this in the Templar orders and the Messianic movements, especially here in the north. You can see in the architecture and monuments, it's a lot of heathen symbolism and references, especially in Stockholm here in Sweden.
Really, right in the heart of Sweden.
The old town in Stockholm is amazing. I mean, it's like a history portal. You can be a guide there and have a full-time job. I think so. So yeah, if you know about the history. But it's really amazing because that's where my interest has been, because this Bock Saga is, it's a mythology, and you can go through all the tapes and you can think about it forever, but you can also build on it, because the thing you want to do with the Bock Saga is to test it,
it's a cipher, it's a key.
Yeah, and that's, I think, that's what it's meant to, it develop, every person that get interested into it develop like a really, it's not like a cult when everyone thinks the same,
right?
But it's very cultish in one way also, because it almost requires some kind of hierarchy within the group, or not a hierarchy, but it leads to that perhaps one is best at preserving like where the correct sounds of each sound in the system. And it's a lot of debate, of course, but from what I have been seeing is that every character that gets involved into the Bock Saga also develops their own unique perspective on it.
Would you say that's because and of course a lot of my audience doesn't really know a lot about Bock Saga yet, and we're going to get into it, but just a general question here, do you think that's because of the phonetics of it, and that you can the one of the biggest claims of the Bock Saga is that this is our root language, the root language of everything? So would you say that because we have all of language to play with, we can all come at it from our own experiences, our own history, our own perspectives, because we all know our own language, and we can all see the coincidences with the phonetics that the root language of Bock Saga is talking about? So it's just like anything else, we're all coming at it from our own place in life, and thinking about certain words in our own lives that we may have found curious before,
Yeah, it brings a logic to the words,
right?
Like, and it goes through everything, because you can easily see if a word has been, not coming out of the pagan world also, like those more bureaucratic words or Latin words. A lot of these words are so like made up that it has no linguistical logic to it within the sound system.
There's no link to meaning.
No, it just it doesn't make any sense in that way. But meanwhile, all the other words that are more, the older words especially, they make sense a lot. It goes straight through, especially in the Swedish.
Yeah,
it's just too much. You get so overwhelmed with it.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Especially in the Swedish
right
language. I'm a woodland like Swede. My family comes out from like the woodlands. They call it because we have like two kind of people. We have the seafarers and the woodland people,
Yeah.
And
on the coastal and more inward.
Yeah, the more of the woodland farmer type, they speak they have a much more slow talking, and it's a different dialect, but they often also use older words that are not like city words. And it's still going on today with that. And because if you go to Stockholm, they talk completely different than in the woodland people, so to speak. So for me, that is really great. I live up here in the northern part of Sweden that are the closest point of Finland, and a lot of Finnish people came here, and they spoke root, which is much more like this woodland. I think it comes out of the root, of course. It's much closer to root than this, like the Finnish call it, the root sinkjali, which they do in Stockholm. They sing the root.
Yeah, I've heard you say that they sing the. What does that mean exactly? I don't. You're not talking directly, as in like the cultural songs are still sung in root.
No, they sing root. I think it's more like because they talk a lot faster and are not as clear, and they tend to bend some sounds, and they are more.
And once again, meaning gets lost, right?
Yeah, it's more poetical or theatrical with the root sinkjali. Because the root is very plain and boring in one way.
So for my audience, let's do like there is no easy way to do a synopsis of Bock Saga. No. But I know that you will butcher it far less than I would if I was just to tell somebody that asked me what it was. So let's just give my audience a little bit of what is Bock Saga, where does it come from, and what's so crazy about it? Let's see how easy we can do that.
Well, Bock Saga is a saga that are coming out of Finland by a guy who called himself Ior Bock, but I think his real name was Ior Ström. What the fuck was it? But anyway, his old ancestral name was Bockström, and his family kept this kind of oral tradition or an oral saga that was running through within the Bockström family, the Bock family, since well, in the mythology they are talking about that the Bock Saga is like at least a couple of 100 million years old, at least 100 million years. Mm-hmm. Because the human race is much older within the Bock mythology than like the scientific would tell you.
There's the mythology part, maybe.
Yeah, so because they like dividing the Bock Saga into different categories based on destructions, or they call it Ragnarok.
Ragnarok.
Yeah. But they talk about this paradise time, which is before the Ice Age, and that's all. The paradise ended 50 million years ago, according to the mythology, and the Atlantis or Atlantis period is this 50 million years period, and the second Ragnarok is where the glaciers starts to melt, and it's one destruction because they were living in this isolation period and developed differently according to the other races, because in this story they talk about that there was one article race that survived this first Ragnarok with it's the tilt of this planet.
Yeah, supposedly the axis of the earth fell. Yeah.
But inside of the Bock Saga, it's a lot about the system that they used in Paradise. But a Finnish guy would know most in detail about exactly what went going on. But he should also know Swedish language. So if you both have Finnish and Swedish language, you can go really far with this. Because then you can also check words against each other that should have the same meaning. The more languages the better. Right. For instance, I think Ior's mother, she could read over like 7 or 8 languages.
Wow.
Or was it his sister? Yeah, there was 2 girls teaching him the saga.
Was it his sister or her sister? I thought it was his mother's sister, like it was his aunt.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you
I
wrong.
think,
It's his mother's
yeah,
sister.
Raquel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm
So
learning a
that's-
little bit about the family.
Yeah, good you corrected me there. But
There's so much to it, though.
yes,
You know,
it's
this Atlantis theory is mind blowing because everybody thinks of it as some specific area. A lot of people lean towards it's like an island in the Azores, but
yeah,
Bock Saga,
all land ice.
yeah, all land ice, Altlantis, and it's
I
when
thought
the
it was that it started for me because I was like really into this with the Nephilim and all this, and they always came from somewhere, you know.
right.
Even in the Greek, you know, they came from up, you know,
Somewhere else, right? It's
Yeah,
always somewhere
somewhere.
else.
and and I thought like shit because a good friend Michael Tesarion, he's told to me like just check in the backyard, you know, where you live, you know, instead of just trying to go all around the world searching for answers. It's just better to focus on your backyard, you know.
Sure.
So that's what I started to do, you know, and yeah, found a lot of interesting clues because I was really into like this with sacred geometry and all of this, and I discovered that on runestones we also found this sacred geometry stuff, you know. So you know, it's a thing that all cultures seems to have almost, at least the more not I don't want to use that word, but the more prominent culture seems to be having knowledge of this type of mathematics.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Seems
I
to be
mean,
everywhere.
that should at least, I mean, that kind of insight is very profound when you start to go into it with this flower of life and all of this, because it's like the code of nature in one way. It seems to be the right way to pursue. I mean, just with with the snow, what do you call it? The snow fling, you know, if you see, they have also this perfect
The
structure.
snowflakes. Yeah.
Yeah, snowflakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a
built into
universal
nature.
thing that seems to be, you know, nature should be the teacher. That has been my like philosophy
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree.
from the very beginning in my life. So, but the Bock Saga just came like a punch in the face, you know.
Yeah, and I started with that Altlantis as well. That's what caught my eye because I've always been fascinated by, you know, this mysterious, ancient, interconnected culture. But Bock Saga tells it much different, that we were all tropical at one point. That's what they say. The whole planet was tropical race people.
Yes.
And then the earth had this catastrophe occur, supposedly, where that's when the tilt happened and everything froze and all land became ice. And then they explain how Scandinavia, right, was the area with all the hot springs where the ice just didn't go, or it was way at the top where Finland was.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this Gulf Stream, because this when the catastrophe happened, the first Ragnarök, they say it takes like a couple of months, because where the deserts are today, all this must have becoming very hot, and it's this water that was contained down there in some fashion ended up here in the on top where like the magnetic pole end. So some kind of nature phenomena, I don't know, must have been really bad weathers and just
Yeah,
enormous.
especially if it happened over months. My
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, so they talk about this, and the people around Udenma, or Hell, as they call it, which is Helsinki.
Hell, hell,
Yeah,
this paradise land.
yeah, but Hell, eller Hel in Swedish, means complete.
Yeah, we were talking
So
about balance.
yeah, but they talk about in this Bock Saga that the entire planet was like one people or one civilization, and they, with this first Ragnarök, they all got cut off from the very central, cultural, and it's a very within the culture that they had portrayed in the Bock Saga. It was like the anchor or the head of the entire civilization, the Aser family they call them.
Right.
And they got cut off for 50 million years from the Van people, which are the Vaner people, they call it. They have the Aser and the Vaner. So even in the Scandinavian mythos, they talk about like when the Aser and the Vaner meet again on like Ida plain, like that.
Geez,
So,
see that right there must have been like, holy shit, it's right here.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, but in the Bock Saga, there's so much. If you just turn like the perspective a little bit and can be a little bit open-minded, it starts to make sense, like everything. But it's quite bizarre because it's so detailed about it's all based on like nature, and it's an oral tradition. Nothing is written in that sense, but must have been using some kind of glyphs or symbolic. But yeah, we shouldn't really know. There are like titles that should have some kind of functions that has to do with rune carvings or
Right.
rune carve.
And the alphabet.
Yeah. So, but it's a different thing than this, because the pagans were really against this kind of written format, because in that fashion you can sort of fabricate what we call fiction today, and that in their logic or thinking from a more naturalistic way, it's unnatural to to write books like that, because you can easily lose like logic and like that you need to think for yourself also.
It also detaches the sounds, right? I mean, you're not orally speaking them, and that's what Bock Saga kind of stresses, is that it's all about the phonetics of the sounds, the 29 sounds in the alphabet, and how it eerily connects to a lot of our modern slang sometimes, which is it kind of, it gives up the ghost right there, that it's like, this is something that's not just like Eeyore Bach was eccentric, but clearly not lying, and he's not making any of this up. These are real. This is clearly a real language that seems to have started all other languages, which is really wild. And I don't want to take it too much down the dark path, but obviously this has been hidden from us across I mean, this seems to have been, this family tradition seems to permeate a lot of this older history. And we do have the story from Eeyore that the whole family had to flee at some point because the Catholics were destroying everything. So, I mean, do you think that it was just a blanket situation where the Catholics were just doing their thing and they were just conquering the world? Or do you think there was kind of, was the Bock family as important as Eeyore suggests? Like, do you think the Catholics were legitimately coming for them and trying to erase their history? I'm
they
very
had
curious
some kind
about
of
this.
they were already in Sweden. The Swedish king there during this time, he got this title Hellbrännare, which means like burner of hell. But they were already had the knife to the throat with this Swedish king, Anon Jacob, I think he's called. But anyway, he assisted the Catholics in the locating Helsinki and burnt it. You know, it's a big treachery. And I don't even think he came back from that journey, this king. But they were really going after, because they knew that you know, this is when we're finished, you know.
Right.
I think that's why it has that name in the English dictionary, because it's Finnish. It's Finnish.
Yeah, to follow suit with the rest of
Yeah.
the story. I mean, if we could give some good examples probably for the phonetics and why this story like has the ability to ping with every one of us on the planet, kind of, you know, and especially in English speaking as well. Like, it's supposed, I mean, English is always kind of discussed as like a newer language, right? But
They say it's around 10,000 years, something like that. Yeah, but
it's just, I don't know, the way it connects right back to the the root language is just nuts in some cases.
but there's so much words that are like the same, like in Swedish.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah, because
roots.
Swedish is supposed to be Sweden speaks root, right? Or
Yeah.
how does, yeah. And how did that happen? I mean, is that just the Catholics being total assholes and be like, you're going to speak the language even though we destroyed your culture?
There's a story from the mythology. They say when this Noah's Ark story, when they had to go to Gotland during the second Ragnarök, they established Gotland because Gotland, they had seen that glaciers were just passing by this island, so they would be safe there. But they stayed in the caves there, which you can go and visit today, that is called Lummelunda Grotto or Lummelunda Caves.
In Scotland?
No, it's on Gotland.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. My bad.
Gotland.
Gotland.
Yeah. But they also found this the rune stones there that you can find in a museum in Stockholm, which is made by the Haser family, which is basically the story of hell and the pagan system.
Mm-hmm.
So they, you know, they like caves because they can seal them off in case of hiding. You know, it's the same thing with this cave there with the Lemminkainen temple. It's also a cave, or it's when you come into it, it's supposed to be like a what they call a water lock, so you can fill it up with water also.
Right.
So
And
you
it's
can seal it
supposed
off
to be
completely.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like some big spiraling staircase or road in there and everything. The Lemminkainen temple is supposed to be the real physical proof, right, of the Bock Saga's legitimacy. Is that
some think so.
Yeah,
Some think that the linguistic is enough, you know.
that's true. Yeah, let's get into some. I mean, it's so hard to even get into that too, because like you could give examples like where the word people comes from, for instance, like the P and the pole, and that whole story. You have to tell.
But it's
a
very
good portion
basic.
of the Bock Saga.
People come from a P and a pole. It's also a circle and a stick, you know.
Yeah, it's so literal and so childish almost. Like, I feel like a lot of people, like even my wife and I talk about this, and she's like, this is what it boils down to. And I'm like, it seems childish only because that's where we came from. We all come from this primitive, more simple-minded ideas, right? I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to look down on or scoff at necessarily. It sounds a little silly at first, but it's amazing when they create their mathematics out of this system as well, this P and pole. Yeah,
but all mathematics derives from that kind of, at least this kind of more natural mathematics, like geometry.
Mm-hmm.
Then you
That's
need
true.
to use, so it's I tend to differ. You have this new linear mathematic and you have the circular mathematic.
Mm.
And I tend to be much better at this circular mathematics. I hate the other when you type stuff into machines and get infinite numbers,
Yeah.
It's just fuck.
Well, it's the same as writing shit down on paper versus
Yeah.
orally passing tradition. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
like, I've heard Jim Chestner and Michelle Merlet both speak on the, putting the pen to the paper. And I saw that definitely as a broader thing, like all of it, include the technology, include just anything non-natural. And that's kind of what that message seems to be, where they're
It seems
coming
to
from
be,
a
yeah.
very natural traditions.
But
It's pretty wild.
on one side, if you talk to these guys, not all the time we talk Bock Saga, but
Right.
very clever people. Otherwise, also, I will never meet more interesting characters because often they have such a big side thing, also,
Mm-hmm.
Because the Bock Saga is a perfect foundation, especially when you're very interested in history, because you get a really good red thread that, for me personally, is the most logical, because or the most that makes most sense also, because it really fits. I'm interested in Swedish history because I'm from Sweden.
Yeah,
But
gotta look
also,
in your own backyard.
yeah, but the most interesting thing is that in the mythology they talk about this Vasa families from Sweden. They say it's a sideline from Bockström. They are Finnish kings, yeah. So, and they ruled Sweden for 300 years, and during these years, they almost crushed the Catholic Church.
Really?
Peace, yeah. There was a big crusade in the 1600s, and the leader of this crusade was Gustav Adolf II, and but he was killed in battle. So, but he already made so much damage to the Catholic system. So,
right.
I think what he did, he put during this time, he also invented this kind of bureaucracy that we use all over the world now. It's a Swedish thing, that he made. And the thing about this kind of bureaucracy is that the Asser family were also very much of the bureaucracy, with this caste system, and it's a structure to it, and you can call it the bureaucracy. But of course, today they have been expanding the bureaucracy and built more bureaucracy. But when it was invented, it was most more practical things like postal service and institutions for just the basic functional society institutions and this kind that we are so used to have. Also, the first central bank was coming with this. But I think it was also because when Sweden came from a really burning place, so to speak. So I can just imagine the strife also, and they had to continue using the system that the Catholic Church used, because Sweden kicked out the Catholic Church in the 1530, and over 100 years later, there was so much new military advancements and all this kind of the bureaucracy, the status apparatus, so to speak. It was like a fine-tuned machine, and flip the world around during this 300 years reign that the Vasa family. You can look at it as good or bad, a lot of things, but I think also that it's about survival. Because if the Catholics had gone through with their plans, I think Europe would have been seen looked a lot different today.
That's true.
Really, so because they, you know, Sweden also had their fingers in America, the Civil War, and George Washington. They were backing George Washington.
Really?
Yeah, there's a very high. He's a field marshal from Sweden called Axel von Fersen. He's on the painting there in the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, wow.
Standing behind George Washington.
Wow, I did not know that. That's
Because
crazy.
we used dollar at that point in Sweden, and you started to use dollar. It's the same thing, dollar, you know, it's a gold back.
How about that?
I think they copied the status, you know, the state apparatus system that they had in Sweden, and found in America on a very similar kind of constitution. It's just interesting to draw those parallels and see, because during the creation of America, Sweden was a great power in Europe, you know. So we had a lot of fingers in every pie, you know.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
It's just interesting when you started to look at the history. You just need to go back like 500 years and see how, especially you Americans, how your history, you know, because your history starts really late, but if you're really interested and feel European, and you have European descent and all of this, and you feel very European or Scandinavian, you can all very much relate, because your family should be coming from somewhere here. And I mean, I think that's I noticed that the Americans are most curious about their roots, and I think it's a lot. It has to do with the American, that you sort of lost your root in one way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we're supposed to just be Americans and wave that flag, and that's the end of it, you know. Whereas I kind of see America as a mall that's been built over a nice woodland area. You know, that's kind of how I feel about America. It's just like, it's this newer thing. It's not just a new nation. It's like it's an experiment. It's not the same as these older cultures, these older places, you know.
It's so anarchist.
In the wrong way, I would say. You
Yeah.
know, because you know, I've heard that the original meaning for even that symbol is, you know, a circle with the A inside, meaning order without leaders, or something along those lines, where you know, you see the crazy, ridiculous symbol all over the place, and that's just a mockery of what that originally meant, supposedly. You know,
I think you know, because there's a story from the Bock Saga about the Templars also. We don't need to go through it all, but at one point they had to flee to America from Europe, because this Napoleon was chasing them all out.
Whoa.
Yeah, so what's left of them today, I don't know what they know, but
yeah, like what influence could have
they lost their
Bocks
heads
had here?
because they had two heads to this order. It was like it's very hierarchy. It's exactly like how it is within the European society, you know, with a very hierarchical society, so to speak. Like a family, you steps into the shoes of, you know, the son steps into the shoes of the father, like that kind of tradition. And it's the same thing within the orders. So
maybe we should go back.
It's they had two heads. This double-headed eagle represented two heads of this Knights Templars, and the last head was this Nicholas II from Russia, the Tsar there. And in the revolution, when they killed the entire Tsar family in the, you know, in the beginning on the 1900s, it meant basically the collapse of the upper echelon of the Templar order. And I think it has been a complete takeover almost from this assassin order or whatever dark force lingering. But must be this more southern. I don't know what to call it, but I call it a religious force. The religious forces has been taking over completely, I think. But who knows what survives and not? I mean, we would. It's a battle that you will know nothing about from the inside, especially now when you have this kind of technology with tactical. It's so precise, everything. You know, before you at least had armies against each
you
other.
could see what was happening.
You could see a little bit what's going on, but because it's these power players that are hiding, you know, behind closed doors that are really pulling the strings. And of course, it is the same thing happening today. I mean, Sweden, for example, is built upon this kind of. It has been built by Templars, Sweden, from the very beginning. At least that's type of Sweden that we are living in today, and it has been at least since the 1750s or 750 years back, like 1250 AD. That's the creation of Stockholm. It became like this. 3 crowns are the symbols of this of Stockholm, and I think it has to do with the symbolism of these 3 article people. Because I was gonna talk about that with this book of the boat of Noah, but with the second Ragnarök, because what happened in the mythology is that when the glaciers had moved and like the ice had settled, the Aser family wanted to move back to Hell there in Finland to start their own, restart and rebuild Hell. But there was like 2 brothers, one called Dan and one called Sven.
It's my favorite story.
they wanted to create their own colonies. So Sven, he went up to Uppsala and started the Swedish people, and Dan, he went down to Denmark and they created his race of people. And in this story, like the Germans and the English, they come out from the Danish, but also probably other areas also now. But from the Swedish came the Scottish, Irish, and the Icelandic. And the Norwegians and the Swedish are basically the same people also.
Okay.
We speak very alike. Then the Norwegian language is just, we just laugh at each other when we speak, but we can understand. Because
That's
it sounds
great.
so fucking funny, man.
What is the 2? I think it's Polish and Norwegian that they just speak English to each other. It's just like a perfect triangle right there. Just speak English.
Well, this is 10,000 years ago. Dan and Sven, they took the Aser language, and that became like the official languages.
Right.
The Danish is very alike the Swedish too. Also, it's I can understand a little bit Danish. I have some Danish friends, but they also speak. The Danish come also from the root, but it sounds more like German. You can really hear that the German language come out from the Danish.
Oh wow, that's so cool. And it's cool. Like all the countries that end in land are all together in this. It's all these original places, all these Iceland and Greenland. That's really neat too.
Yes, it's only like this Thailand, but it was called Siam before.
Oh,
Netherlands.
Right.
Yeah, but Thailand is a little bit off, but it hasn't been called Thailand forever. It's a quite new thing.
Now there's a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's how we speak Swedish, but it's the only story I have about it. So because our history starts in the 1500s, there's nothing. It's like only names of kings.
Oh, before that, it's just
we had a royal library in Stockholm Castle, but it was burnt down in the late 1600s. The entire library, like half of it, got destroyed. I think, or something in that scale.
That seems to always happen.
Yep. It's it was a really 1600 up to the 1700 was a really shaky period, at least at the end of the war. I mean, we had one king assassinated also, like a really prominent king that kicked the Russian embassies out because Russia had annexed Sweden. Every decision had to go through the Russian embassy. But this Gustav III, he made this strike against Russia. It was the biggest naval battle, and I think it still is till today, that there was going on there in the Baltic between Russia and Sweden. Wow. And the Sweden won that battle. So they had like, it's a very honorable way you could, this is the way they did it, strange, show some muscles and have your way,
Yeah. And did you say he was assassinated?
Yes, but by these Illuminati forces that
that's really interesting, man. He sounds like a real hero of the people.
Yeah,
and gets assassinated. And I always notice these parallels. And the last time America had pretty much the only guy like that in here publicly assassinated.
Yeah,
it's just
this assassin. If you see this kind of methods with assassinations, if it's publicly or physically,
it's a trademark.
It's a trademark by these Illuminists.
Right.
But this kind of forces has been changing their face also. This Illuminati is a more recent, I would say. Before that, they, I think they called like a more Jesuit.
Yeah, we've heard that too.
The Jacobins are more the Templar style. So the Jacobins and the Jesuits are going after each other.
So there's that light versus dark, perhaps, or maybe not even light versus dark. Maybe they both think they're light. I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
That's always how it goes. Which is weird with some of the stuff that, we accuse these Illuminatus types of. How could they ever see themselves as the light side? You know what I mean? But who knows? I don't know.
But that's nice when you focus on like a small country like Sweden, because it's so small, and the power center is Stockholm. So everything that happens in Stockholm is so notable. And there was only a couple of thousand people living in Stockholm. Only the aristocracy lived there. At the Stockholm bloodbath, they call it, they killed like hundreds of people, and it was the entire structure, almost power structure of Sweden, that they can kill off. They can pull them all into one room, and this is how it's a small country. It's a few people on a big mass of land, so to speak. But it's just a very fascinating history what happened with the revolt that this Vasa family did. And thanks for they of course had the aid of the Finnish, because Sweden and Finland was the same country from 1250 up to late around 1800. During Napoleonic ages, we lost Finland after the Napoleonic ages.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about how this hierarchy system kind of goes back. We just see it everywhere. We see it over and over again. And I was having this discussion about it the other night, how the way that Bock Saga kind of describes their hierarchy, it kind of seems like that's where our hierarchies come from. And I was having this talk with my wife, and she was kind of like, that's kind of really unfortunate to find out that even supposedly at the beginning, there was this king up on high yelling down the commands to his son, who was giving it over the fire to all the people. But I'm wondering, the way that I keep finding out more and more about these different systems that the Bock Saga describes, like the military system actually being more of a procreative thing rather than a violent warring thing. So it's like, it seems like everything's been inverted from that original state. So I wonder if this king on high sort of hierarchy was very honestly and very literally a loving father kind of setup rather than a violent warmongering commanding king setup. Am I completely way off base on that? What do you think
Well,
of that?
I would rather look at it like one family. You have your father, and you have your grandfather, and maybe your great grandfather. It's more that kind of perspective on it than that's the king and he's some remote snob, you know.
Yeah. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, so it's more like one gigantic family, you know. It's
Well,
very strange, you know, in one's eye today, but this Ouroboros or the Midgårdsormen, it's also like this biological route, so they stay one race, you know. Also they are like one people, because with this kind of offering we also affect the immune system in the herd also. I think it's it has many, it's a very natural way of living. It's almost like if you look at some monkeys at the television, you know, in one way. But I would see that the focus is still, you know, it's not only this kind of sexual structure, you know. It's I think that's only leads, so we can't really go into the heads of the people at the time, you know. It's such a distant concept.
Yeah,
but in one way we had this system so long here in Sweden, but I can imagine that it's very privative, and you know, this is something you maybe do on a more closed door setup, of course. It's not like this what you would imagine in the mine, you know, jumping in the crease and just banging some chick on the in front of the tribe. I don't think it was like that. It's more like this kind of sacred, it's a very sacred thing, you know.
Yeah, and of course we're talking about parts of this saga that we haven't even really divulged to the audience yet, but I mean I honestly don't even know if we should on this. It just there was some interesting traditions going on in Bock Saga. There's a lot of incest in the story because about survival, I would say, on that level, like you were suggesting before, you know. But what I was we're trying to emphasize this idea that this hierarchical system that we see all around the world, there's a possibility that it started as like a familial kind of thing, and it wasn't, you know, them versus, it wasn't like us versus them. It wasn't the government versus the people.
No,
it was more like just the reason why I came to that conclusion is because I heard a story about how they possibly used money back then, where the king would hand out coins with his face on them, and everybody would use them and trade them around. But then at the end of that year, those coins would get handed back in, not used anymore. It's not like the king was collecting wealth, but then new coins would be passed out with like the second year, and this would continue. So no wealth was, you know, concentrated with whoever decided to hold on to more of them or whatever, you know. That system could not exist, and that immediately reflected to me a father giving his kids a bunch of fake gold coins and teaching them about money and how to cooperate or something, like an experiment or a lesson to be learned or something, you know.
I'm thinking about also, like, if you do it that way, I you know, if you take into the perspective all the other aspects of this kind of society, it's really based on like honor and respect, because you always offer up, you know, in the system, and I think also this kind of offering affects the people in a spiritual sense, perhaps, or because there's always like wisdom passing down. I mean, it's an information thing also. With it, that are coming with this kind of offering system. You have this kind of caravans with different kind of titles, as this gypsy or zigenare, we call them. It's more or less titles within this system. But you have this kind of gypsy people also that were the more mystical, that were coming with caravans, or the different kind of trade routes, or the different aspects in the web of connecting an entire civilization on such a broad scale without technology and all of this. I mean, it's we really have to like flush our brain out and start over to really if you are even to consider or thinking in those terms. It's a very, I noticed it's not for everyone, this kind of information, but the information that can be passed through or examined and sort of repolished to an audience could be really interesting, especially the perspective that comes with the historical part of the mythology, which I think is very interesting. But if you are gonna be able to understand symbology that are coming out from like the Templars and the Freemasons, and especially like the 1600 type architecture that we have in Sweden, it's a very interesting kind of symbology that are only going to be able to be explained if you understand this kind of information, like the Bock Saga.
Yeah, I've been racking my brain just because like I don't yet understand it anywhere near enough to just fire off about it in a convincing way.
Like that.
Right? There's so much of it. I mean, but you give a few, watching some of the videos on YouTube or the bocksaga.info website, 5 minutes of it, sometimes you're like, holy crap, oh my God, that's where that word comes from. That's where it's unbelievable. And I'm racking my brain, like how can we help get that kind of information out as the key? Let's get this key out and get it in, make it palatable for Western culture that are used to nanobite little bits of information rather than taking in the full story, which is really difficult with Bock Saga and this phonetic root language. It's crazy, but maybe some visual aid videos in the future really or something like that.
I've been pushing this so much because when I got into this, there was like so little on YouTube, and I've been begging the people there who have been staying with ER and to just get everything that they have and just put it up on YouTube and or whatever. It seems they have been doing so also. So now there's so much out, and that's really good because if you get into the saga, you just want more and more and more because if you really, because it sparks some kind of curiosity that you want to be a part of it because it's so compelling. And it's like the best thing about it is that it triggers you to think for yourself instead of someone just showing something down your throat. It sparks an intuition, and that's more my kind of way.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. It feels so, I think I told you this on the phone a couple weeks ago, that it feels so personal, like getting into Bock Saga. And it makes sense why, because if this is true, which I don't know, like we said also on the phone, that there's not many people out there like linguists and etymologists coming out and striking all this down or coming out against Bock Saga. There's not any pushback, at least not yet, or anything. That's the thing. I think if this is on anyone's radar in those darker realms or whatever, they're probably like, just stay quiet about it. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe they won't catch on. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
it's like this because if those kind of people also take a look at it, maybe they also get hooked.
Yeah.
And a lot of the agenda that is coming with the, you know, the Illuminati or whatever, this kind of a society that they are imagining, it's sort of what is portrayed also with the Bock Saga, but with another twist to it. You know, it's like they know about it because I know that the king of Sweden that are now sitting, he's not like actually in power, but he's the head of these orders that we have. We have 3 different orders here in Sweden. One is called the Order of the Seraphim, or Seraphimer Orden it's called. And we have another one is called the Svärdsorden, which is like the Order of the Sword. And you have the third order is called the Order of the North Star. But this was created by Gustav III in the late 1700s. And what happened is that we have a French king now. That's what happened. When Napoleon took over, we got a French king. And Gustav IV, he had to go into exile. But anyway, this family has been mixing into all kind of royalties here from Sweden. So they are not so much French anymore, but they have a lot of French in them, you can see. But they are still heads of these orders. And I saw that they had like members like Manda. What was its name? Manda.
Oh,
People
yeah.
like this, like some king, the king of Thailand is a member, and you know, people like of this ilk, you know,
Weird.
kings and weird stuff.
Very similar to Freemasonry,
Yeah,
Rosicrucianism.
it's very much so.
Yeah.
But they have like their own, and I don't know what else. But anyway, he was like the biggest customer to Ior Bock on his presentations on the 7 islands there on Sveaborg, where the entrance to Valhalla is supposed to be. And those societies from Sweden also came, and from all over Europe, I would think, coming and listen to Ior Bock talking about like 1700 history.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He was supposed to be an amazing tour guide in that.
Yeah, he is. And interesting thing also is that he gave Ior some kind of, not title, also this king of Sweden. He gave Ior some kind of permission to have audience with the king at any point.
That's
So
interesting. That's very
weird.
Curious.
But anyway, I don't think they knew that, or they probably knew, because Ior was also on national television in Finland talking about Bock Saga.
Yeah, wasn't he an actor for a long while too? He was all kinds of he was performing in all different areas. Yes. Okay. Theater. Right. Yes.
But that's what he did when he had his speeches there on Sveaborg. He very like a theater.
Yeah. He was a great storyteller. Yeah.
Yeah. You should see the movie there. It's on YouTube. This from the national television. It exists with the subtitles now, so you can see.
Oh, I'd love to watch it. Definitely.
Haven't you watched it? It's like 45
I don't know.
minutes.
Wait,
national television in Norway.
I don't think I have.
Yeah. You should watch it.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, we've been talking a little bit about Bock Saga, and I want my audience to go check it out for themselves because, like we've both said, there's too much to really explain the whole thing. But I mean, the bigger picture is that, like I said, it's a key, and from that key, you, even being a native of Sweden, are finding out so many different new things about your own history. This is kind of unlocking. It's like the door that needs to be opened, and it's a beautiful thing. And I love that we have our fingertips on it now. And I know that you and me and Dan are kind of planning on something to bring this more to light. And I think that'll be great to do. You know, Dan's a great guy. Shout out to Dan.
Yes. What I'm just gonna say is that you know, despite everything with the Templars and there's so much negative stuff about this kind of. But I think the organization in itself has been infiltrated, and that's why it's a bad force now. But I think like in the 1600, the early Protestant days, I think the intentions were very good.
Mhm.
And during the reign of 300 years, when we had like almost like a Bock type family ruling, the result is that very liberating in many, breaking of taboo. Although, wars and havoc has been happening also, but, world affairs is complicated matters.
Of course. Yeah.
But at least they gave this knowledge of reading and writing to the people. And that was something that the Catholics had monopoly over. So you could be punished by death if you had knowledge about reading in Europe. But with this revolt that Gustav Vasa did, and they reformed Europe more or less.
Mhm.
So you had this more, what they call it, more of, when you have the Bible in the home instead, like we have today. It's a gift from the author, you could say.
Okay. Yeah.
This reading and writing, in the common sphere. It's not what the religious forces wanted. I tell you that.
Right. Okay. Because I mean, well, we were saying how the reading and writing, or the writing at least, was kind of the descent away from the oral traditions, so it can
Yeah.
be manipulated so easily. But on the other side of it, we can gain knowledge, obviously. Still.
Yeah, I mean, the modern world is built on that kind of
Yeah.
information exchange anyway. So
Right. It's unavoidable.
if you look at it in that way, it's I mean, when you take stuff into perspective from all angles, you can see how complex. You can't really tell it's a good or bad guy just by hearing some rumors. You need to really. I mean, it's a lifelong process. I mean, that's why it's so nice we can come together and share knowledge, I think. And if we are more specific, like some people really know about Spain or Germany or fucking Ireland or Russia. I mean, that's so precious when we come together and have different kind of knowledge, but we're really talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
But
we're all
yeah,
putting our own puzzle pieces towards it.
Yeah, I mean, it's I encourage people to do as I mean, look in their own backyard. I mean, America also has some history, but try to go even further. I mean, there are a lot of European. It's easy to do family research in Europe, especially from the 1500 up in like Germany and England and Scotland, Ireland, Sweden. I don't know too much about the more southern European countries, but I mean, it's just an interesting. You never know where you will end up.
Yeah. Well, doing a lot of this research into Europe has kind of led me to where my last name Rouse may or may not have come from the Reds, which is what like it's all about Vikings and the traveling to Ireland and everything. I'm Irish as hell.
Okay.
So yeah, I love that history. I went to Ireland a few years back and I got to go to Giant's Causeway, and that right there blew my mind because of, all the mythology about giants and everything. It's all over Europe. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I learned about Finn McCool and those whole characters, and I'm seeing the trickster pop up in those stories in Ireland, just as I see them pop up in the Middle East and everywhere else. It seems to all be the same stories. We just need to fill in these puzzle pieces bit by bit to kind of get the full thing. I don't think our history is lost. I think it's slowly but surely, and maybe picking up the pace of coming back together for real.
I think if you develop a symbolical literacy and has good historical understanding, then architecture and statues can also they can also tell you a story. Like as a great example is this Gustav Adolf II has a statue down in Stockholm where he rides on his horse, and it's like he's done with something, and behind him is this Roman legion armor, you know, with this very unique helm with this kind of shoe brush on, you know.
yeah, the mohawk.
But it's dismantled into pieces and just laying there behind him, very symbolical for what he did. I mean, it's this kind of way that they are working with the statues and architecture. It's a lot about symbolic, because you have to, it's only references, you know, to it's the way of a architecture, and this more baroque, I don't know, the Greek is also very much like this, you know.
Yeah. It's the symbolism can stand the test of time, and it can defy language.
Exactly. This is why they love to destroy statues and this kind of thing. Exactly. I heard that Napoleon, he destroyed the Sphinx, they say.
He tried to, right?
Yeah, but he shot the tits off.
There's so many different interesting angles to the Sphinx. I've heard that it was once Leo, the constellation, like a massive lion that was just dismantled and turned into a pharaoh. It's so interesting. And how about that? Egypt connects right back to, I've heard, I think it was Michael Tessera talk about the word Kemp, or how Egypt was called before Egypt. It was Kemet. And he related it right back to the word Bock somehow. Like
could be, but it's very. I've been there in Karnak, and it's
you've been to Karnak?
Yeah, it's all goats
everywhere.
Yeah,
goat symbolism.
Goats lined up, and between the head and the feet of the goat, you have like the pharaoh there, or some great person. I mean, it's. It's all about goats all the way through.
Yeah,
and Bock Saga is all about goats. I mean,
yeah, and now the goat is evil.
And you have the sun goat. You know, it's all about this goat. The bock in Swedish or English is goat.
All right, buck.
Yeah,
right. So. Yeah, that's kind of what it's referring to. It's, and of course, you know, I'm sure some ears perked up at that point. Like, wait, what? You know, the Luciferian symbolism of the goat is everywhere. What are you talking about? And there's that inversion. There's that inversion, you know, just like hell is the most evil place way down there, instead of what we're really talking about, this paradisia time in this great place up north. Like, it's all inverted. And that's another reason why Bock Saga like immediately stood out to me. I'm like, oh man, they've been inverting everything since the very beginning.
But that's the way they do. That's how Gustav Vasa also did. All this Templar is a trick by the Templar. It's just turn it.
The trickster.
Yeah, but I thought they made so they can just flip it very easily around. So
like not even as a trick, but like it's for us. Like it.
Yes, like this military system also is just flipped around, because this Gustav Adolf II, he came with what we call modern warfare.
Oh.
And it's this military system where we have like this different kind of titles, but those kind of titles or hierarchy system is coming straight from the heathen system, the heathen offering system. But instead of making people, they kill people instead. So it's just
perfectly inverted.
Yeah, right. Perfectly inverted. But the system and organization structure is based upon the heathen's structure. That you cut by 10. This captain or captain, you cut by 10. So you have like 10 and 1, like this. It's exactly like you have in the Author family, but it's just a replica. But there you have like 12 sons and 7 girls. Yeah. But the first and last, they are, you know, this kind of titles arrangement here and there. It's a heathen
Do you know how many conspiracy theorists and patriots are going to be so annoyed and butthurt if this whole thing turns out to not be nefarious at all, and it's just been misinterpreted and confused, and people have gone the wrong direction, and there isn't some big evil force that's been controlling this from the very beginning? People are going to be let down.
But at least we're coming with something new to the table, and it's very.
It's going to be no one to hit.
I never have this attitude that I'm going to be some kind of savior or messiah. No. I mean, it's just I don't know. I mean, it helped me. I mean,
yeah.
I like to just have a conversation about it and have an exchange, because I think if you're really like hardcore and you're really interested, like a seeker, or I think you should at least have it in the bagage or in the luggage, because at some point you come back to it, I think, and because the momentum or the massive, I mean, it's so massive, this Bock Saga, and it unifies so many other areas under one roof, so to speak. I don't know, but it's everything becomes this red thread in one way. It's a
yeah. Yeah, man, it definitely, that's what it feels like. It's like there's no turning back, really. This is what's what.
I mean, when you come over this, when you sort of broken the taboo over the more sexual side of it, I mean, it's I don't think it's healthy to have this more Christian attitude that you should be ashamed if you this kind of hide in the closet attitude towards sexuality. We don't have that. Where I grew up, there was very natural to make jokes and talk about sexuality. It's sort of I mean, you can see how the religious types, especially in the Muslim world, how it affects their brain, I think, also, and with these rapes and this, I don't know, it's just very, very alien to me to make taboo of this. I mean, it's but so for me, it's not so strange in one way, but I think it just gives even more respect to the female, and instead of it just being some kind of taboo, a shame thing, that you have a sexual curiosity also. I mean, it's I don't know. Yeah. It's just that part that it could be a little bit.
Yeah. Well, strange. I mean, are we referring to like specific parts of what the Bock Saga talks about traditional wise, like the Ouroboros and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not this same kind of structure that we have, with the entire Western world is built on this more Catholic style, of course, with a household, and you're a man and you have a wife and you have kids, and what we are used to in the entire world today, mostly.
yeah, for them it's like a standard.
Yeah, but I wouldn't personally want the pagan system to back in now.
Right, it's kind of hard to deal with that part of it. It's like we all for decades, a lot of the philosophers and the cultural activists have talked about the archaic revival and bringing back all these ancient ways, and the New Age movement is really the ancient ways movement, but the further we go back, and when you look into Bock Saga, it's like, well, how much of these traditions do we need to break? We don't, and we are referring to autofellatio, getting yourself off in that way and consuming your own seed for very specific, I would say, religious reasons. I mean, there's no scientific proof that that's making you the strongest breeder in the family by sucking down your own seed. but that's where the term succeed comes from, supposedly. It's incredible, this mythology that makes you uncomfortable in a very honest way, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
At least in the Western world.
But that's what the best thing about the Bock Saga, I think, is that it brings forth some kind of honesty in people, because it's all based on honesty.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just so taboo that you just have to be honest.
Well, you were
Otherwise,
bringing
will
up,
trick yourself.
you brought up monkeys, and I hate to make that comparison, but let's face it. If you are children, like Lord of the Flies is a great example. Kids with no parents, you know, that's what early civilization must have been like. Adults had no, you know, we were all learning about everything. So I mean, it's like primordial, like on a spiritual or like a cognitive level, the human young spirit would be looking down at his dangly thing and going, all right, well, what is this thing? I'm gonna, and there is no society going, well, this is what you don't do with these things, you know? It's like, that's the beginning of our experimenting with reality. It feels like that's what this story is about almost. You know?
I think the language from the very beginning developed from like naming body part.
Yeah.
Should have been something like that.
Pee in the
and
hole.
Then naming nature and a different aspect, and you know, develop language in that sense. Because in the Bock Saga, it's a very rapture beginning of the human race. It's a very like unnatural way.
Well, they all, every religion has their weird beginning, right?
Yeah, but they say, you know, it's a Odin thing that the human beings came to be, with this hybridizing crossing between the goat and the monkey.
Yeah.
But it's like a intervention or some kind of, because it happens right on the North Pole, it's supposedly.
Right.
So some kind of weird thing when we got a part of Odin in us also, with this. That's why they have a different name for sperm and the animal sperm, which is embla.
Embla.
So we have a part of the sun in us, which makes so we can speak, I would say.
Right, the clock in Frey's head.
Yeah, this so we can conceptualize and do this weird kind of vocal thing that are really the the destructive force of the human in one way, but could also be the creative side, of course.
In the beginning was the word.
Yeah, something like that. But it's told that you know, we are starting out from a pretty high level, because the human were like in this story very perfect from the very beginning, you know. So yeah.
There's so many layers that we can dig into, and I think you know, the audience, for those of you that are interested, you know, things are going to be happening with Jocke, Dan and myself. We're going to be working on some things in the future, possible podcasts, not just about Bock Saga by no means, but digging into a lot of these phonetic roots and using Bock Saga as our key, you know?
Yeah. I'm thinking also that we can bring some people on there that has been staying with ER and has not been on any show or anything. So
that would be great. Give them a voice.
Maybe we can work on that, because it's mostly older people that don't have so much experience with computers and all this. And just to be able to have some kind of platform to talk a little bit. Maybe this is something we can try to do, so we can hear from people who has been thinking about Bock Saga like over 30 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, and you can really tell the difference when you talk to someone like in our circles that are really fascinated by it versus these guys that have been dealing with it for decades. It's second nature.
But it's a lot of them, most of them don't have the root in their head. So it's only a couple of Swedish people and some very few Finnish speakers. I mean, it's mostly like outsiders from Germany, America, and other places that are very interested makes a
That's so
majority
unfortunate.
of the group. So, but they have also gone the trail of trying to test the story, and the results are often very, very interesting. When we talk about the historical aspects, different architecture or whatever, that are coming out from Greece or Egyptian or Russia or wherever on the planet, So those people are a real treasure if you can get them on and have some go into a more tangible in the pursuit. We find everyone can contribute in this because it's an ongoing discovery.
It's our story.
Yeah, it's the
Belongs to
story of
everyone.
humankind. It belongs to everyone. So
Yeah, man.
it's not on a Eeyore was never wanted any money for anything he did. It's not about money in any sense.
Right.
I mean, the guy who wrote the book, I think he's a Dutch guy, but it's the guys that are interviewed. They didn't took any money for putting that book together. I mean, it's not about money. It's only about continuing the legacy of what Eeyore wanted. Just so you know, it's nothing about money. It's only to in an uplifting agenda, so to speak.
The more we know our history, the richer
it's a
our
gift.
life is.
The story and the sound system are a gift from the Arthur family to the Warner. So it's a gift to the people. Like in this story, they talk about how the Arthur gave agriculture. The Arthur gave domesticated animals and this kind of cornerstones in building cities and larger scale, civilization at all. So the Arthur family has always been giving,
and we
and that tells a lot.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking like the Catholics, they want
Right.
1/10 of your pike that you take from the lake. I mean, it's a
Yeah, Bock has given so much that they've vanished from the world, basically, because they didn't take and make sure they, it's a completely different system, and it speaks volumes about the character of
it
the
has
story.
volumes. And also like this Vasa family also. That's why it's so important for me to research them, because I know they come from this Vasa and Bock Arthur family. I mean, it's a theme that they have. They are the family of good, as they said, the good guys. But in English, it becomes God.
And that's just yet again how it can get twisted easily. It's a never-ending twisty rabbit hole. It's amazing. Well, yeah, okay, it's been real, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and I know we're gonna do more stuff together in the future, man. And I know that I would love for you to, if you plug anything you want, but your music especially. I love your music as a metalhead, and if you don't mind, I would love to actually I'm gonna put in one of your songs, if you don't mind, on the end of this episode, if that's cool.
Sure.
Hell yeah, man.
Sure.
But yeah, tell the people where they can find you if you want some questions thrown your way.
Well, I usually don't go out with any.
That's fair.
But I have a YouTube channel now, so people can find me there at least. That's the only official thing I have.
Cool, man.
Besides from my music channels, though. But my name is I say Jocke Häggström, and
I was close. All right.
If you search for it on YouTube, there should be my channel there, with the double-headed eagle and the Swedish flag there.
All right, man.
As a little symbol. But I've been doing a little bit of videos when I on my own, but I have like a a co-host, and he comes from this Vasa family actually.
Ooh, that's right. Yeah, that's great. He's a great resource
So-
to have close by.
Yeah, he's my Stockholm guy.
That's so cool, dude.
It feels like I'm going down to some audience with the king when I go visit him.
That's so cool, man. Well, dude, we're gonna dig into a lot, and I hope the audience enjoyed this little crazy introduction into this deep story, man. And we'll talk soon.
It's a deep story. It's the story behind all stories, like it's.
Hell yeah, man. All right,
Hell yeah.
everybody. Well, have a great weekend, and see you guys later. Take it easy out there.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, that's hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...